Hey spookers, joining me in this video is the very talented Fearcrawler. He's an amazing narrator, and if you're looking for more scary content, I highly recommend heading on over to his channel after this video ends. The link to his channel will be in the description below. Now, with that being said, let's begin. When I was about 10 years old, me and my family moved from West Palm Beach, Florida to a suburban area outside of Denver, Colorado. We had planned on moving years ago, and we did so as it was getting really expensive to live in Florida no matter where you were. My parents liked Colorado as that's where most of my family lived, and they had also found a really good school for me to go to which had great ratings. I'm not going to mention the name of the school for privacy reasons, but let's just say that it was a fairly new school. It was about 5 miles from our new house, so I could practically walk there without having to rely on any sort of transportation. The new school was far better than the one I originally went to. Nicer students, nicer teachers, and it was very easy for me to talk to new friends. There was one of my teachers, who we'll call Mr. Smith, who was my math teacher, who I really made a great connection with. I hated math, who doesn't, but Mr. Smith made math a lot more fun. He'd be willing to help people in class no matter how many times someone asked, and I'd also like to mention that he was hands down one of the best teachers throughout the school. I only wish I still had him as a teacher after what happened this one day. It was a Friday, which just so happened to be the last day before spring break. I was in my second to last class with my English teacher when our principal came on the speaker and told the school that this was a code red, and that all students should get inside the classroom immediately. I'm pretty sure no one in my class has ever been in a real lockdown before, so we were all huddled in the corner. A few people were so scared that they actually started to cry, thinking they were going to get harmed. My teacher told everyone to be quiet and to not make any noise for any reason. It felt like an eternity sitting in the corner, waiting for the all clear. However, I then began to hear heavy footsteps from down the hall. The only reason as to why I could hear it was because I was the closest to the back door. I didn't know if anyone else heard it, but I looked through the little glass window on the door to see a man dressed in all black. However, I couldn't see his face as he was wearing a hoodie, but I instantly knew that he was up to no good. I didn't know how it happened, but he turned his head toward my direction and must have caught me looking at him from the window. He came right up to the door and started pounding on it. The whole class screamed and cried while the man kept trying to bust down the door. However, I knew there was a slim chance of that, as these doors are bulletproof and meant to be almost impossible to break open from one person. After several bangs and kicks to the door, he had finally given up and walked away. The principal then came back on and said it wasn't all clear. Now, this is where the disturbing part comes in. Apparently, a man had just broken into a nearby gas station and had shot the employee. I later learned that 4 people, 2 of them being teachers, had been shot. One of those teachers was Mr. Smith. I was told that he was escorted to the hospital by paramedics. However, he had unfortunately died in the hospital 2 days later due to loss of blood from the wound. I still have no idea if the man was ever caught or not, but I'd like to think he was. My condolences go out to Mr. Smith's family and relatives. It's really sad to know that such a great person with a happy personality got taken away from a school who adored him.
I was in my 5th period biology class. The door to my biology classroom was outside on the 2nd floor, near a bridge that overlooked the senior patio, which was a large outdoor place for students to eat lunch. It was lunchtime for half of the school, so we were able to hear the students talking and laughing. It was a gloomy day, very cloudy and windy. A thunderstorm was approaching, but it hadn't started raining yet. Suddenly, the talking and laughing from the lunch patio changed. We heard the students screaming loudly. My teacher looked out the window and she saw all of the students who were eating lunch outside running into the second gym, which was right next to the lunch patio. Our teacher assumed there must have been a tornado, so she told us to get under our desks and cover our necks. A few seconds later, we heard the intercom turn on. A voice said, "Code Red," and the intercom hung up. My teacher had us all hiding in the corner, out of view of the windows. My teacher had to crawl on her stomach to lock the door, close the blinds, cover the window on the door, and turn off the lights. It was obvious this wasn't just a drill. Most of us were crying. We were terrified. When the school is under a code red, students aren't allowed to be on our phones, but some students in my class disobeyed that rule. They Googled what was going on. There was a news alert of there being an active shooter at a high school. Our high school. The school was very quiet. You could hear a pin drop. About 15 minutes after we were put under a lockdown, we heard multiple helicopters fly over the school. All nearby police officers were told to come to the school. The road outside of the school was closed because parents were lining up around the gates surrounding the school, crying for their children. After what seemed like hours of sitting in the silent classroom, our door was broken down. Despite it being locked, men ran in with large guns in their hands, the ones with lasers at the top. It was the SWAT team. My teacher wasn't wearing her school ID that day, so they pinned her to the ground and searched her. The SWAT team told all of my classmates to put our hands on our heads and to not move them. They made us get in a line, one SWAT member at the front of the line, one at the back. They said something along the lines of, "We're getting you guys out of here," and we all ran in a line through the halls as fast as we could, down the stairs, and out the main entrance. When we made it to the parking lot, there were tons of police officers and emergency personnel. Parents were still surrounding the gate. As it turns out, there wasn't actually a shooter. A student at the middle school next door prank called 911, saying that there was a shooter in the cafeteria of my school. Naturally, I was relieved, but I failed to see the humor in the joke.
About 3 years ago, I had just started my senior year in high school. It was most definitely the year I've been looking forward to throughout my high school career. No more bullying, more freedom, fun activities, and one step closer to becoming an adult. I say normal bullying as the school I attended didn't have the nicest students, and when you're a senior, you don't really get picked on as much. I'd also like to mention that our school was located in an area that wasn't so great. What I mean by that was that there would always be reports of break-ins, and sirens would often be heard at least 3 times a week. You get the picture. It was the middle of April, which happened to be the time where all the seniors were getting ready to graduate in June. I was most certainly looking forward to graduation day. No more huge amounts of homework and no more of those low-quality school lunches. One day, I was in school in my pre-calculus class. We were in our class listening to our teacher lecture about what to expect in trigonometry for college when we heard our assistant principal come on the speaker. She said that a nearby homeowner reported a suspicious-looking individual lurking near our school who was possibly armed. Needless to say, the whole school went on lockdown and our teacher told us to follow all lockdown procedures. Our class had this big closet, now enough for at least 20 people, so our teacher told us to hide in there until the all clear. We all hid in the closet, waiting for something to happen, and eventually, it did. Fast forward to about 10 minutes later, we're all still hiding when we hear a loud bang from down the hall. I instantly identified the sound as being a gunshot. Most of the class knew it as well. All of a sudden, we hear the little glass window of our door shatter. Gunshots began firing inside the room for nearly about 30 seconds. Thank God none of the bullets hit the closet door. The shooter, whoever they were, ran away, followed by more gunshots. This continued for around another good minute before we hear 3 or 4 men ordering for someone to get down on the ground. Turns out they were police officers. They put the man in cuffs and ordered the students out of the school. As we were walking out of the class, students flooded the hallway, bawling their eyes out, but surprisingly nobody was hurt. Ever since that day, nothing has ever happened to our school. I graduated soon after, and thank God as to how grateful I was to still be alive, as things could have turned out a whole lot worse.